He married her for a cruel bet. He thought it would be his biggest joke, but it became the moment that broke his pride and changed his heart forever. The low hum of conversation filled the luxurious country club, the air thick with the scent of expensive cigars and aged whiskey. Daniel sat at the head of the table, his tailored navy suit fitting like armor, his smirk as polished as the gold watch on his wrist. Around him, his circle of equally wealthy friends lounged in leather chairs, their laughter carrying the kind of arrogance only money could buy. The night had already been a blur of drinks and dares, each one more outrageous than the last. Then, over the rim of a crystal glass, one of his friends leaned forward with a sly grin. "I dare you," he said, "to marry someone completely beneath your world. Someone who could never fit in here." The others laughed, tossing out names. And then someone mentioned Lila, the soft-spoken, plus-size woman who worked at the little café downtown. Daniel remembered her vaguely. She always had a warm smile when she handed him his coffee, even when he barely acknowledged her. The thought of bringing her into his world, parading her in front of everyone, it felt like the perfect game. "All right," Daniel said, raising his glass. "I'll marry her." The table erupted with cheers and laughter, but to Daniel, it was just another challenge, another story to brag about later. Love wasn't part of the equation. He saw it as nothing more than a dare to win. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this decision, made in arrogance and liquor-soaked bravado, would become the turning point of his life. Lila was about to walk into his world, and nothing about the man he thought he was would ever be the same again. Daniel's proposal came like a summer storm, sudden, dazzling, and impossible to predict. Lila stood in her small kitchen, the scent of fresh bread still in the air, when Daniel appeared at her door with a bouquet of white roses and an unexpected question. "Will you marry me?" Her heart raced. She had seen him in the café many times, always confident, always a little distant, but never cruel. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard, and against the cautious whisper in her mind, she said yes. In the weeks that followed, preparations moved quickly. Daniel handled everything: the venue, the guest list, the photographer. Lila's world felt like a dream she hadn't dared to imagine. Friends and neighbors were stunned, some whispered, some celebrated. She chose to believe in the fairy tale, pushing away the quiet doubts that occasionally surfaced when Daniel seemed distracted. The wedding day arrived under a sky painted in soft blues and gold. Lila wore a simple white gown that hugged her curves with elegance, her hair pinned back with tiny pearls. Her smile was radiant, born from the belief that she was walking into a future built on love. Daniel looked every inch the devoted groom, his hand warm in hers as they exchanged vows. Guests clapped, cameras flashed, and laughter filled the air. To everyone watching, it was the perfect union, a love story that crossed worlds. But behind Daniel's polished smile, the truth of the cruel bet still lingered like a shadow. For him, it was still just a game. For her, it was everything. And as they danced under the twinkling lights that night, either of them could have guessed how quickly the mask would begin to crack. The honeymoon phase came and went like a passing breeze. At first, Daniel played the role of the perfect husband: lavish dinners, surprise gifts, charming smiles at public events. But behind closed doors, his attention often drifted elsewhere. He spent long hours away from home, sometimes returning late at night with excuses that didn't quite add up. Lila noticed, but she didn't complain. Instead, she poured herself into making their home warm and welcoming. She cooked his favorite meals, decorated the mansion with fresh flowers, and remembered every birthday and special date of the staff who worked there. Her kindness spread like sunlight through the cold walls of Daniel's life. The guards at the gate, the maids, the chef, all adored her. They saw in her a genuine heart, something Daniel's world of wealth rarely offered. Slowly, without realizing it, Daniel began to see her differently. He caught himself watching her laugh with the gardener or kneel to help the housekeeper's child tie his shoelaces. Her laughter wasn't loud, but it was warm. Her presence made the house feel alive in a way it never had before. Still, he didn't admit these feelings to himself. Pride kept him silent, telling him the bet was still just a bet. But at night, When Lila's breathing was steady beside him, Daniel sometimes lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering why it was suddenly harder to see her as just a pawn in his game. The cracks in his cold exterior were forming, small, almost invisible, but each day, Lila's quiet strength chipped away at the arrogance he wore like armor. And Daniel, for the first time, was beginning to question if he was the one being played by forces far greater than a drunken dare. It was a quiet evening in the mansion, the soft glow of the chandelier casting golden light over the polished floors. Lila was in the study, arranging fresh flowers in a vase, when she heard muffled laughter drifting in from the adjoining room. Curiosity tugged at her, and she stepped closer, stopping just behind the half-closed door. Daniel's voice was unmistakable, tinged with amusement. "Of course it was a bet," he was saying, his tone dripping with pride. "Marry her, keep it up for a while, then walk away. Easy win." His friend chuckled on the other end of the call, clearly enjoying the cruelty in the story. The words sliced through Lila like glass. Her fingers tightened around the vase until she realized she might drop it. She stepped back, heart pounding, her ears ringing with the echo of his betrayal. Every smile, every whispered vow, every touch, they all collapsed in her mind, replaced by the image of Daniel laughing at her expense. But she didn't cry. She didn't storm in shouting. Instead, she waited until Daniel entered the room, still grinning from the conversation. Standing tall, she looked him in the eye. "You didn't break me, Daniel," she said softly but firmly. "You just showed me exactly who you are." The calm in her voice was sharper than any scream. Daniel froze, the smirk fading, a flicker of unease crossing his face. For the first time since the bet began, he felt something unfamiliar: shame. That night, Lila packed her things and walked out of the mansion without looking back, leaving Daniel alone with the echo of her words and the crushing realization of what he had truly lost. Days blurred into nights, and the mansion that once buzzed with noise felt hollow without Lila's presence. Daniel tried to distract himself with business meetings, luxury parties, and shallow company, but none of it filled the silence she had left behind. Her absence wasn't just physical. It was a reminder of the warmth he had taken for granted and the respect he had thrown away. One rainy afternoon, Daniel found himself parked outside the small café where Lila had returned to work. Through the window, he watched her laugh with a customer, her eyes bright, her hands moving gracefully as she served coffee. She looked happy. Happier than she had been with him. Summoning courage, he stepped inside. The bell above the door chimed, and Lila looked up, her expression unreadable. Daniel approached slowly, no arrogance in his stride, just the weight of sincerity in his voice. "Lila," he began, "I was wrong. About everything. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm asking for a chance to earn it." She studied him for a long moment, then set down the tray she was holding. "Change isn't proven in words, Daniel. It's proven in actions, over time." And so it began. Daniel returned again and again, not with gifts or grand gestures, but with help, respect, and a humility she had never seen in him before. Months passed, and slowly, Lila's guarded walls began to lower. One spring morning, she reached for his hand across the cafe counter. "Maybe," she said softly, "this time, we can start for the right reasons." Daniel smiled, not with victory, but with gratitude, knowing this was no longer a bet, but the first honest step toward love. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Subscribe to Kindness Corner for more powerful stories that inspire and move you.